Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Beth Meyer, and I'm the Vice President of Corporate Partnerships at Discovery Education. As many of you know, we were scheduled to have this panel discussion on Tuesday afternoon, and our work focuses on supporting educators and students of all races, backgrounds, and beliefs. And in light of the horrific tragedies that have taken place against Black communities in this country, we felt it was important to create space for community conversations around the ravages of racism on Blackout Tuesday. We really appreciate our friends at Landmark and the Social Innovation Summit for making time for us to have this important discussion today. Originally, we had planned to talk about students' emotional health during a global health crisis, which is a big topic on its own. But now, as our country finds itself experiencing civil unrest on top of a global pandemic, I think it's fair to say we're going to talk about how we can support students' social and emotional health during one of the greatest times of crisis we have faced in recent memory. As I mentioned earlier, I work for Discovery Education, and for those of you who aren't familiar with us, we are the ed tech company that was born out of Discovery Communications, like the channel. And we work in more than 90 countries, reaching 60 million students. Our mission is to harness the power of digital media and technology to help every child reach their highest potential, no matter their race, gender, socioeconomic standing, sexual orientation, language, ability, or location. And to do that, we partner with schools and we work hand in hand with teachers every single day to provide digital content that addresses every learner's needs. We also, thankfully, partner with like-minded companies and nonprofits who share our mission to build equitable futures for every student. A lot of times when corporate America comes together to talk about education and the skills gap, it's understandably connected to STEM skills. But making sure we are equipping the next generation to be emotionally intelligent and culturally sensitive is just as critical, which is why we're happy to have this important discussion today with 5 prominent thought leaders in this space. This group of impressive and incredibly nice women bring unique perspectives on the evolving emotional needs of our students. They do this always, but especially now, and especially for our most vulnerable populations. These companies are pulling SEL into the bigger mission picture and the need to engage students on different levels. Not just the content and the learning standards, which is important for sure, but the emotional support that is so critical now. Forbes recently posted an article titled, "It's not children's education we should worry about, it's their mental health." It's our job to provide support to teachers around the complicated and important work that they do. And today, we're going to hear from these companies and how they're working to support schools and communities and what opportunities are out there right now for companies to join in and help us bring long-term solutions to the table. So with that, I'd like to introduce our panelists today. You'll notice we have lots of Lauras, so bear with me. Dr. Laura Bakosh is the co-founder of Inner Explorer. It's a nonprofit that brings mindfulness-based SEL programming, starting with the littles at preschool all the way through high school classrooms. She was very gracious in leading all of us before you guys flipped the switch on a moment of mindfulness, which I know I particularly appreciated. She has led TED Talks. She has participated in multiple scientific studies about the impact of mindfulness practice, and we're so grateful to have her here today. Laura Barbieri, did I say that right?
Barbieri, close enough.
Leads corporate social responsibility and community relations for one of our wonderful partners, LG Electronics USA. Laura is responsible for LG's social impact initiative called Experience Happiness, which equips youth with skills to reduce stress and create sustainable happiness through science-based resources, which I think we all can agree we desperately need right now. Bridget Laird is the CEO of Wings, a nonprofit that was founded 25 years ago to provide high-quality SEL resources to Title I elementary schools. She leads Wings' effort to consult, train, and provide technical assistance on these programs for district schools and youth-serving organizations. Laura Freveletti is the Senior Program Officer at the Allstate Foundation, and she leads the foundation's program focused on empowering youth to become the next generation of leaders. Her work focuses on using corporate reach and influence to address pervasive issues in society today. Cheryl Hollis is the Director of Programs at Wings and focuses on assessment, curriculum design, frontline training, and coaching. Cheryl has spent the last 10 years mastering the implementation of SEL in after-school programs with a specific focus on Title I schools. So with this new virtual discussion, I would invite you to use the QA button throughout the presentation. We'll reserve the last 15 to 20 minutes or so for audience questions. And so with that, let's dig right in. Social emotional learning has emerged as an important part of our collective COVID-19 response. Yet many companies, specifically all of those that are represented on this panel, were already addressing students' mental health. So if we start with Laura at LG, I would say there's never been a more important time to teach students about happiness. And LG was so committed to this idea that LG launched the Experience Happiness Initiative back in 2017. And this initiative addresses a lot of the underlying issues we're talking about today. So can you share more about how you got started in this space and why LG decided to make this the area of focus?
Yeah, thanks, Beth. First, I'd like to say, I'm thrilled to be here speaking on behalf of LG about this really poignant topic. As you said so eloquently at the onset, we have kind of been on this precipice of mental health crisis for quite some time, and it's really more important than ever to push social emotional learning into the forefront. So at LG, we really try to lean into our mantra that life's good, right? And we wanted to create a program that really embodied that and encompassed that. So as we were kind of putting our weight, we wanted to put our weight behind something that really emulated our CSR vision and of cooperating towards a better, happier life for everyone. And we wanted our CSR program to be credible, to be authentic, to be more than just words on paper, right? That's what we all want. So we wanted to develop a platform that would allow us to achieve meaningful and long-lasting impact across the country. So in our research to identify a cause, we learned that more than half of American teens are stressed. And I remember being super stressed out as a teen. I'm sure it's even harder now. And when school is in session, teens are the most stressed out group in the country. This statistic is particularly alarming because stressed out students tend to do poorly in school, which can obviously affect their quality of life and reduce their options for success later in life. So what's more, stress and anxiety, when not addressed, can spill over into different facets of our lives, right? It can spill over into our health and manifest in that way. It can spill over into our academic performance, friendships, relationships, kind of the whole spectrum. It's very deeply intertwined in our life. And so what LG found is that 75 years of scientific research shows happy people are healthier and they live longer, do better in academics. So in schools that incorporate happiness studies into their curriculum, experience a dramatic decrease in bullying, absenteeism, discipline issues, and a simultaneous uptick in student engagement, optimism, test scores. So this scientific framework that I just mentioned was kind of used as the foundation of our signature cause program, Experience Happiness, which you just mentioned. So as we were kind of deep diving into this and we started to do some research on partners, we identified 5 different partners that were really experts within this space in the science of happiness and in social emotional learning. And so our first partner was, of course, Discovery Education. Super grateful for you guys. And we also work very closely with Laura Bakosh at Inner Explorer, as well as Project Happiness, the Collaborative for Academic Social Emotional Learning, and which is also called CASTLE, and the Greater Good Science Center. So each one of our partners really lend significant credibility and authenticity to our program, and they've been instrumental in achieving that social impact and having the success of the program be what it is. You know, each partner really brings something different to the table, but the common denominator is that they are all on the forefront of delivering the science of happiness. So just to kind of drill down a little bit, because it can get a little confusing, our partners disseminate information kind of in 3 different buckets. So they disseminate information through educators, classrooms, and field experts. So in the first bucket, we have Discovery Education and CASTLE. You know, among other things, they work very closely with teachers to create engaging, hands-on activities for students through their networks and supplemental curriculum like Discover Your Happy, creating virtual field trips, and really fun, immersive, engaging activities. The second bucket being classrooms. We provide students with direct access to resources like Inner Explorer's fantastic mindful meditation platform, which I'm sure Laura will talk more about after this, and Project Happiness's toolkit for after-school happiness clubs. And then the last bucket is the field experts. So we work in tandem with the Greater Good Science Center, which I mentioned before, kind of lends that credibility and scientific arm to collect data on social emotional learning and to really establish that credibility and best practices. So thanks in part to our nonprofit partners and, you know, LG's ongoing commitment and monetary commitment to this science-based happiness, Experience Happiness has grown and it's been wildly successful, reaching 44,000 schools across 20 states in more than 30 major cities. And so our goal is to reach 5.5 million students by 2020. And really to make this, you know, kind of a household concept and to really kind of spread the science of happiness. So I'm sure that was a very extremely long-winded response to your question, but really kind of wanted to drill down and give you a synopsis that shows the depth and breadth of this program.
So one of the things that I think is so great about this is when schools started closing at a rapid pace and companies started coming out with what their response was to COVID-19, what I love so much about the LG response was, our response is a program that we developed 3 years ago that was designed, you know, specifically for a moment like this, which is really wonderful.
Totally. I mean, it really was not, obviously no one wanted this pandemic to happen and no one wanted kind of all of the different current events that are happening, but at the same time, you know, it really felt very timely. We had already kind of laid the foundation for this program and you know, it is kind of our true north has been now more than ever. It is so important to have this in schools and to really make sure that it's, like I said, a household name.
Yeah, thank you for that. So building on what Laura was saying, so with school closures due to COVID-19, students are facing heightened levels of uncertainty and change in their daily lives beyond what they would face when things are considered normal. So for Bridget, Wings provides high quality SEL learning, SEL resources to Title I elementary schools, but Wings has really been a pioneer in this space. You know, we're talking a lot about SEL now, and there's been some conversation about it, I'd say, in the, you know, recently more so now than ever, but can you share why Wings was created 25 years ago?
Sure. It's interesting because, yes, you're right. Now a lot of people are talking about social and emotional learning, but 24 years ago, nobody was talking about it. Nobody knew what it was. And quite honestly, I even remember writing a grant and we didn't get the grant. And in red print at the top of the page said, "Who cares how a child feels about themselves if they can't read or write?" They were literally making no connection to the social and emotional skills. So we have an interesting founding story. Our founder was actually at a point in her life where she was experiencing a lot of professional success and she felt good about that. But on the personal side, she just wasn't quite happy and she wasn't handling things in her life a way that she would want to. And she thought to herself, what is it that I'm missing? And at the time, the book Emotional Intelligence by Dan Goldman had just come out. And she took that book and she was like, this is what I'm missing. And I want to make it my mission to create an organization that gets these skills to kids early enough so that they don't get to my age and they're missing them. So in our very beginning, our mission was to teach kids how to live joyfully, powerfully, and responsibly before the time they were teenagers. And that was the beginning of social and emotional intelligence. I mean, I remember talking, and I've been there for 22 years. I remember talking to people at Castle about it and kind of defining what this was. And at the time, we knew all kids need it. And I always believe all kids need social and emotional skills. But we couldn't quite figure out how to deliver this, because the school day is tough. You know, everyone has academic standards to think about and guidelines. And at the time, you know, 25 years ago, the after school space was perfect for this because there was a lot of time to weave in. There was freedom. There was opportunity to do research. We were able to kind of do our own thing. So we developed a social and emotional learning program in an after school program. And because Title I kids need after school programming more, we began focusing on Title I kids. But again, I think that all kids need it. It was a twofer. We were able to give an after school program and social and emotional learning at the same time. But I think all kids need social and emotional learning. So really, we have grown into understanding that it's all about helping kids make good decisions, learn how to build healthy relationships, learn how to behave better. And that's really at the forefront of what we're doing and helping kids. So, and even though our mission has kind of changed throughout the years, it really is about helping kids live more joyfully, powerfully, and responsibly before the time they're teenagers.
As a parent of 2 teenagers, I couldn't agree with you more. So with that and the importance of starting to teach these skills when they're young, I think we're starting to see more attention being focused on educating students on understanding and managing their emotions, showing empathy, establishing positive relationships, and, you know, starting to see SEL practices being embedded in a growing number of classrooms in the country. Because Bridget, to your point, you know, up until recently, it was very much regulated to, you know, a before or after school program. So for Laura at Inner Explorer, Inner Explorer provides mindfulness programming for children, you know, through the gamut from the time they're in preschool all the way through high school. So with that and with your experience in this space, can you give us an overview of just what you would say is the current state or status of children's mental health?
Yes, I think that what we've all seen in the news over several years, and most notably recently with COVID, is that mental health amongst children is sort of in a crisis state. So we have very high rates of suicide and addiction and depression and anxiety. We have more and more children on medication for those disorders, and the rates of all of those things continue to climb. So COVID has just maybe hit this next tipping point where the research very currently is showing more than 7 out of 10 children are in a state of significant mental distress. Adults are in that state too. Many that are maybe watching, and maybe even some of us on this panel, are all struggling with all of the things that have been going on over time. And this is what brings us to a state of chronic stress and how that changes the brain and the body and then our behavior in ways that we really don't want, right? It becomes more divisive, more unjust, more inequitable. And so I think we have a real opportunity to bring forth some powerful preventative programs in order to stem that tide. And that's the work that we're doing. If I can maybe explain that for a moment.
That would be great. That would be great.
So there are 3 things that I would just love for the folks watching to walk away with, along with all the great things that are said, but 3 things about our work. The first is that there's real excitement around the biology of stress. And I know that sounds strange, exciting biology, but we know a lot more now about how stress impacts the brain and what that means downstream for children. The second thing is that there are preventative measures, some that we've already touched on, that can stem that tide and in a way that helps kids reach their potential, which is what we all all are trying to do. And then the third thing is that there's action people can take today to influence that. So the biology of stress is really about, we show people this hand model of the brain. And if you'll play along with me, I'll put my fist in front of my face here, but there are three main parts of the brain. This is great to explain with children as well. There's the brain stem, which is sort of my wrist here. It's where your head meets your neck or your spine. And that's responsible for all the automatic things in our bodies, like our heartbeat and breathing when we're not thinking about it, and digestion. So that's deep in the brain. We don't have to think about it, thank goodness. The second part is the limbic system. So my thumb's tucked way in here. The limbic system is known as the fight or flight center. Most everybody has heard that term. Most everybody has probably experienced that effect, right? When something scary or traumatic or difficult arises, we start to have adrenaline rushing. We start to get really tense. And in some ways, stress is good. It helps us focus. It helps us avoid problems. The challenge is when it's overdone, which is what we're all living through now. The third part of the brain is where my fingers are. This is the cortical structure. And right at the beginning, the front of my knuckles is the prefrontal cortex. So when we talk about educating children, most often we're talking about what's happening in the prefrontal cortex. That's where curriculum lands. If we're going to teach math or science, we're teaching to the prefrontal cortex. The challenge, and this is the key, when the limbic system is fired, right, that we're in a stress state, the thinking brain goes offline. It's like we flip our lid, right? So we know from functional MRI that the prefrontal cortex goes dark. There is limited activity in this part of the brain and hyperactivity in the fight or flight system, which means that we have children in this case that are more reactive and less ability to think clearly, right? That's clearly an issue. But what we now have, because we've had consistent increases in stress amongst children, what we have now is children whose lids are flipped all the time. And what's terrifying, and I did say good news, and I'll get to that in 1 second. What's terrifying is that during adolescence, if this continues throughout a child's life, right? Poverty, trauma, you name it, COVID, inequity, this gets stronger. The brain begins to develop these pathways so that they are faster and stronger, and it begins to prune these pathways. And that is why we end up with children that grow up in challenging environments, not able to complete school, not able to get good jobs, not able to process information. They are reactive and unable to really have a successful life after that. And that's not a matter of people's desire. It's a matter of biology. So the intervention, so the really good news is that practices like mindfulness, and this is sort of 10 minutes a day, just like teeth brushing. You do it a little bit every day and it's preventative. Mindfulness actually downregulates the stress response. So the kids are less likely to trigger. And when they do trigger, they don't trigger quite as high. Mindfulness also has been shown to increase the activity in the prefrontal cortex. So not just when you're sitting and practicing mindfulness for a few minutes, but all the time. So research continues to show that the prefrontal cortex is more active and it actually grows in size. So think about that, like your brain and the part that matters the most, the executive center, becomes larger and more active. That's pretty good. The third thing is that it speeds up the time from when you flip your lid to when you come back to neutral. So mindfulness studies have shown, and this is basically resiliency, is a measure of time from when your brain goes offline to when it comes back online. And so mindfulness speeds that time up so that you're able to more quickly come back to a point where you can think and consider what you want to do next. So that is the work we're doing. So the great news is because of the generosity of organizations like the Allstate Foundation and LG Electronics USA, and even in partnership with Discovery Ed, these tools are available, as you said, from 3 years old all the way through high school at no charge. During COVID, and even there's programming after that that's still no charge. And we encourage, so here's the action for anybody that's listening, to go and register for your free programming. It's easy to do it with your kids, have your kids do it on their own. And once you begin, I promise you, you will feel less stressed, you will start to feel better and be able to engage in ways that are as productive as possible in your life. So,
so it's almost like when you think of building muscle memory. Is that safe to say that as you're, again, starting with them when they're really little, ideally, that as they get older, they, you know, that muscle memory of good decision making and being mindful of how you feel and others feel is taught and learned, and then becomes more automatic than some of the quicker reactionary things that might have a more negative impact. Is that safe to say?
yes, that is very safe to say. It's like brain fitness is another sort of term that's thrown around, that we're teaching children how to develop those aptitudes. But it's, as I said, it's a biological. It's not so much, hey, let's be nice. That's an intellectual thing. It's letting niceness and compassion and focus and creativity emerge because you've blocked out the other stuff that's not helping, right? You've blocked out the traumas and the things that are sometimes holding us back.
That's great. So staying with, thank you for that. I'm going to tap you, I think, to move in with me and my family for a month, and I'll be blossom after.
I have a teenager. I'm with you on that.
But sticking with the trend of, you know, these organizations here, I think just looking way ahead, for Laura at the Allstate Foundation, last year, Allstate announced a multi-year $45 million commitment to empower youth to build SEL skills, which is tremendous. So what drove that investment, and what impact are you hoping to see at the end of that 5-year commitment?
Hi, everyone. I'll start in 2013 when the Allstate Foundation was really pivoting our focus on youth from teen safe driving. After we spent a decade educating, campaigning to ensure that teen deaths through driving had been reduced. So at the end of a decade of that work, it was 2013. We were doing research with consumers to understand what was important to them, and youth continued to be a very important social issue. Further research showed that social emotional learning is truly the key to success. So our focus in 2013 became preparing youth for the future. And we were new to this and spent 5 years really understanding what that meant. We began to understand the long-term impact of social emotional learning. We also had been supporting service learning, and the combination of those two programs and resources for youth, it became very clear to us that that was the key to the future. So it was in very late 2018, 2019 that we dedicated $45 million in resources over the next 5 years to social emotional learning. And our goal was to really achieve a tipping point so that youth, and at that time we said 25% of youth in the United States would have those skills. Experts had told us that that's truly the tipping point to start reaching into every home and for every youth. But I'll talk just a moment about how we're going about this. We really are working with a variety of different organizations, many of whom are on this panel with us today, to reach educators and parents. I think one of the biggest challenges we have, and one of our big focus areas, is awareness about the key and the importance of social emotional learning. So educators are pretty far along the spectrum of recognizing the importance. I think they are looking for tools and resources, which our partners are providing for them with our help. But we really are trying to make parents aware of how important this is. So that's a focus for us. We're encouraging policymakers to be also aware of this, make important budget decisions that support SEL resources across our nation, providing professional development and training so educators are as equipped as possible to help their students develop social emotional learning. supporting educators and parents in their own development of SEL skills, and then joining with other companies like LG Electronics and encouraging other companies to address this very important issue. Because as employers, we are looking for employees who have these skills. The World Economic Forum, just in the past year or two, has ranked emotional intelligence as one of the top most important workplace skills today in 2020. We also know that our economy is shifting from one based on manufactured goods to one that's driven by ideas. So with that dramatic shift in the skills that are needed, how are we employing our students, our young people for the future? And we're doing that through social emotional learning. So our goal is to ensure that all youth are equipped with these life-enhancing skills.
So it's interesting, we're seeing these consistent themes balancing with hard skills and soft skills and things when you think of the cross-curricular nature of, you know, your science, your math, your social studies, and then the need to be, you know, to have that emotional intelligence to be able to bring that value, not only to daily life, but to companies,
Yes.
So as if school closures aren't enough, parents are losing their jobs. Students are seeing racial injustices play out right in front of them, which is really exasperating SEL and the social inequity issues that we've talked about. So for Cheryl, can you provide an on-the-ground perspective of what it's like to work with the kids and the students that you support through Wings and the challenges that they're facing?
Yes, sure. Hi, everyone. Well, as Bridget previously mentioned, we are serving Title I schools. And so a good percentage, usually 90 to 95% of our students are coming from low-income families, live in poverty, experiencing many challenges. I think of some of the kids that we serve, our older students who are taking care of their younger siblings, so their parents can work 2 jobs. As Laura was stating earlier, they not only do they have challenges, but they're experiencing higher levels of stress. And in thinking about, you know, Wings and what kind of what it looks like on the ground is we have a group of mentors and leaders who all buy into the mission and goals of Wings, and most importantly, what or how important it is to focus on social and emotional development of the kids that we are serving. And they make a point, a huge point every day to ensure that kids know that when they come to us every day, that they have an opportunity to relieve their stress. They have an opportunity to be a kid, have some fun, but also learn and grow. So they're welcomed each day with smiling faces, sometimes their favorite music, high fives and hugs, maybe a special handshake. They're engaging in enrichment activities that they might not otherwise have the opportunity to experience, whether that be because of financial situations, what's offered in their community. So they're getting, you know, various experiences. They're creating a family within a family. So they are learning new things about others. They're having opportunities to step into the shoes of others. They're building relationships not only with their peers, but their mentors. And with all of that, we are often intentionally creating situations in which they're able to practice these social and emotional skills. So whether that be through a game that we play where we know it's going to, you know, trigger a little impulse here and there, but they have a member of our team there to walk them through how they can manage, you know, maybe the frustration that might come with that. So that's really, really exciting. But within all of that, I would say the overarching thing is that we're building strong relationships with kids, and with that, they're learning to have stronger relationship skills. And they are seeing the world in a different way other than maybe they might typically experience. And so with some of the changes that we've recently had, like COVID-19, those relationships have been a challenge for us to maintain. But fortunately enough, we have technology. And so we've made every effort to continue those relationships virtually. We've been in communication with our families about things that they can do at home. It's really just about them continuing to hear the language that we all speak, which is SEL. We're all talking about it. We know it's important. And so just continuing to be in communication with them about that, but most importantly, for the kids to know that although they're not showing up to the program every day and we're not all on the ground, doing the things that we typically do, they have someone that cares about them and is continuing to look out for, their best interests and continuing to teach them things that will help them through the things that we're currently all going through.
So
yeah, just to add on to what Cheryl mentioned, the great thing about Wings is the engagement and the fun and what they enjoy. And it really did hit us in March when the kids had to go away. And our kids are going home, and a lot of their parents were essential employees. So their parents were still going to work. They didn't necessarily have internet access, and they were potentially watching younger siblings. So our kids' lives were really falling apart in front of them. And what they were missing is this Wings interaction as well. So I think, kind of to Laura's point, the trauma is just piling up during this time. And I mean, Cheryl and I talk, about this, that, wow, Wings is always such a great asset in the social emotional learning. We hope that we've inoculated them so that they can get through this, but they're really facing really tough times right now. And it's hard. We do everything we can, like Cheryl said, to be there, but it's going to be a really hard time to keep that skill set building and to keep them so that they can pull through this.
So with that though, in a situation like Wings, that these children and these families rely on you so much. And this is a question for everybody. Has anybody's initial priorities around SEL changed or shifted in the wake of COVID-19, or maybe the way that you need to approach the work in the wake of COVID-19?
I would say it would. No, go ahead.
Please go ahead, Bridget.
I would be very, very quick. I think that it has motivated us to continue to do exactly what we have been doing. I feel great that we had started that work a long time ago, and now understanding that people are recognizing the importance of the social and emotional skills side, that we can be a part of the momentum that helps continue to build all kids in this way. And, obviously when you see crisis, people think about how can we respond. And to me, we're in a great place to say, let us help, let us continue to provide resources, to continue to provide guidance out there, because we've been doing this. So I think in my mindset, it motivates and enforces what we've already been doing. And it's our calling to keep that going and to keep pushing.
So a question popped through specifically for LG and for Allstate, which is a great one, which we hear it a lot. How does a major company think about measuring impact when it comes to SEL in the world of ROI?
Yeah, it's a tricky question. I would say from the LG standpoint, and I don't know, Laura, if you would agree with this, but we really want to see how many students we're able to impact, in terms of our reach. So obviously Laura at InterExplorer has done a great job of being able to see, here are X number of downloads for this mindful meditation app. So while it feels a little bit amorphous and maybe not so tangible, like in these instances, we're able to see like a very clear cut example of how we're reaching students and who we're reaching. Discovery as well. We can see how many educators have downloaded the curriculum and how many toolkits have been disseminated. So while, you know, in this space, we oftentimes talk about like, how do you measure the ROI and how do you do all these things? It's actually been relatively simple to see that impact thanks to the partners that we have.
Yeah, I would add it's a conversation we have all of the time at the Allstate Foundation. How are we measuring impact? And we really go back to research and we go back to evidence-based programs. And when we feel confident that the organization we're supporting, like InterExplore and Wings, have evidence-based programs, then we can show an output. So in 2019, we reached 14 million youth with our programs, all evidence programs. We feel really good about that impact. But we know that, you know, we can also look at some of those shorter term indicators, you know, the grades that are improving, the number of young people who are moving from one grade up to the next level. We can also look at the number of states who have guidelines around requirements for social emotional learning in the schools. So there's a lot of different types of metrics that we take a look at to help support our belief that we are really helping to create that impact. So that's another way in which the Allstate Foundation looks at that.
Totally, and I'll just add anecdotally, you know, in addition to like hard numbers, which, you know, obviously we always need to kind of continue the work that we're doing and make the case for it. But, you know, I remember one of my first weeks at LG, we did an event in Clarksville, Tennessee that had a lot of our employees. We have a plant, LG has a plant down in Clarksville, Tennessee, and we did a back to school event, and InterExplore was there and a couple of other stakeholders. And, you know, the principal of that middle school actually came up to me and he was like, ever since we started implementing this program, we've seen disciplinary rates cut in half. And so even just having people tell you anecdotally like what this means to them, I think even though that's not hard, tangible numbers and facts, it does really lend itself to show the impact and how far this program can go and SEL in general.
Yeah, just a quick something to add to that. I think that the anecdotal information stories that we get are critically important because I think it's somewhat difficult to understand social emotional learning. So when you hear that, you know, this has helped classrooms and youth communicate better, be more aware of what's going on in their community, want to do a volunteer project, those little snippets of how this is affecting them is incredibly helpful in helping the broader audience understand social emotional impact.
I think that's great. And I think one of the things that I would love to continue this conversation, Laura, with you, you know, to see a year from now, once Allstate is, you know, maybe at that 2.5 to 3 year point, you know, what do the next couple of years look like? You know, what are the learnings or the pivots that you would make? So for Cheryl, as you're working with these kids, can you share an example of a story of how you know what you're doing is making an impact, you know, one child at a time?
Yeah, sure. I think, you know, before I share an example, I think what's, I guess, important to mention is that it depends on how you look at the impact, because this is something that we teach our staff. Oftentimes they come in looking for the change right away. And it doesn't happen that way, right? It takes a little bit of time. So it's also being a little bit realistic about that impact. But there's also moments or examples one could you know, think of that are immediate, you know, and you know that you've made an impact in a quick moment. And so at Wings, we focus on using the common language that we have within our program to have these intentional, in the moment, teachable moments with students. So a good example of that would be, for example, if we had a child who came into our program right now today and they wanted to share how they felt about the pandemic or, COVID-19. Say they, went to the grocery store with their family that weekend. They came in on a Monday and they were talking to their leader, and they were just saying, I went to the store and everybody had on masks. And, thinking about a kindergartner or a first grader who really just does not understand that, our staff are really taught to engage in dialogue with the child about, maybe what they might be feeling, or stepping into the shoes of the person who is wearing that mask. Like, why do you think they're wearing it? Do you think they're wearing it to protect themselves? Do you think they're wearing it to protect others? So talking about, hey, is that scary? Is that something that makes you nervous? You could go even deeper in talking with the child about when you feel nervous, what was your body doing when you felt that way? This is something that you can do the next time you feel that way, whether it is, taking deep breaths or going to someone that you can talk to about it. And so all in all, I think it's, it really is, the attention that adults are giving towards supporting children through the various experiences that they're currently happening and that they're going to most likely have when they return to us. But that would be an example that I would just say that could be very realistic for a lot of us in the near future.
And Cheryl, I think it's so interesting how you were talking about working with the kids about, how they're feeling, how their body is reacting to what's happening around them. With Laura, goes back to what you were saying at Inner Explorer, the difference between that, fight or flight, like what your natural instinct is to do. What do you think, so for Laura at Inner Explorer, what do you think realistically is the youngest age, the earliest age where mental health can be discussed?
That's a really good question. Probably, 3 or 4 at, using appropriate language. So, what we find with our programmatic approach, the kids at that age practice mindfulness for just 5 minutes. So it's about 3.5 minutes of kind of a guided process. And then it's about a minute of a song that they really connect with. It's called the exploring song. And really what happens at even those young ages is that children, because we're not teaching them external things, we're actually inviting them to explore what's happening with them. So we start with very tactile practices like breathing and sitting, and what does it feel like if your hands are touching each other, as an example. And over time, as kids build the capacity to pay attention, their brain gets stronger at being able to sustain attention. And then we move into more sort of abstract ideas about how thoughts come and go and how feelings come and go. And it's remarkable, even at those young ages, that kids can use that language. Kids can start to talk to their families about it. We hear very often from parents and caregivers that their kids come home and start becoming more regulated than they are. And that's sort of crazy, right? If you think you're an adult and your 3-year-old or your 4-year-old is handling his or her emotions a little better than you, what we find is that actually inspires families to join. And again, it's why, after COVID, it's been kind of remarkable because it's given families a real chance to be exposed to this kind of programming because their kids are doing it on whatever device they have through this kind of family app, and they're being able to participate because we're all home. Right? Or many of us are home, of course, and frontline workers aren't, but they still have a chance to participate no matter where they are because they can link in. So,
yeah. I would just really quickly add that, I would suggest to anyone to just start modeling it as soon as you can. I think it's so important, even if, kids don't have the language or the wherewithal to be able to completely understand, they do copy everything that they see, right? So just, I think if we all practice, modeling certain things, it would be really, really impactful for a child, say even at the age of 1 or 2, or before that. So if you don't have the words to do it, to those of you who are watching today, I would just suggest that you maybe find ways that you can model it and practice the things that you want your child or children that you're in contact with to practice, and be that role model for them.
So I'm getting the virtual blinking, letting me know our time together is almost up. But what I would love is if we could just quickly have each panelist maybe give a tweet length takeaway, soundbite of one thing that you would love to leave everybody with about this discussion. Laura from LG, if we could start with you.
Sure. I think, really standing up for each other and, is how we really stand together. And so I think in that spirit, LG has really tried to be at the forefront of social emotional learning and is proud to contribute to a program that really reminds us that we need to support each other and come together. And like I said, now more so than ever.
Bridget from Wings.
Sure. So Cheryl talked a lot about language that we can use with kids, and at Wings we have something called Words to Live By, and we've developed a whole program around that so that it can be integrated at homes and classrooms. It's all free, and it's at soarwithwings.com. And I think that that's a really easy way for what I was talking about earlier, to just keep the momentum going. It's easy to do. There are things that can be woven into every part of the day, and I just think that it's a great way to keep the momentum going.
Thank you. Laura from Allstate.
A couple quick thoughts. First is urgency. We need to think about these skills with a sense of urgency to ensure that young people as well as adults can embrace these and find life success from the benefit of these skills. Secondly, I would say we should all think about how do we scale programs and how do we increase our reach. I would also say, think about wrapping all of this through the lens of equity, given what we've just experienced in the last week and decades, honestly. And then finally, I would say there are so many free resources that are available to both educators and parents that I encourage everyone to seek those out and find them, either to educate yourself or to share with others to use in your own homes and your own schools. And of course, those could be found, some of those at the Allstate Foundation.
Cheryl from Wings.
Yeah, so I would say that, just now more than ever, it's important for everyone to just learn as much as you can. And what you don't know, try to get as much information as possible and share it, and just continue to share it. And hopefully that will, impact the lives of people you come in contact with, but not only that, impact your own life.
Laura from Inner Explorer.
Yes, and it looks like my statement is up on the screen, so I can read it. But really, the idea is that inequity and injustice are preventable, and they can be changed in not a lot of time if we commit to prevention now. As Laura Freveletti was saying, we need some urgency around this. We know how to do this. We know how to bring children to a place that is around self-awareness, emotional regulation, resilience, compassion. These are things we desperately need in the world today. We've needed them for a long time, but we need them now more than ever. And it's up to all of us to get going. This is easy to bring forward. We just need the will to do it. So we're grateful for those that are viewing, and we're grateful for the panel of experts that we have the pleasure of working with.
So just to close us out, I just want to thank everyone on this panel, not only for your participation today and what's a really, really important conversation. It's an important conversation to have every single day of every single year, but I think in light of where we are now as a society, it's critical. We have a URL that I believe is up on the screen where we have pulled together from all of these great partners. We have something called the Daily DE. We launched it when schools started closing. They are free, grab and go, grade band specific resources for parents that are standards aligned, but they're designed to have kids have some fun learning activities to do that doesn't require heavy teacher instruction. So I'd encourage you to go there. We have a special SEL edition of the Daily DE available for everyone. It's it's in the chat window along with a blog just summarizing some of the key points. And then just in closing, and if you'll bear with me, I'm going to read it because candidly, I don't want to mess it up because this has been a hard and emotional time for everybody. So I just want to take a minute and just say that the past several weeks have been a stark reminder of the ugly reality of the permeating racial injustices in our society. And it's highlighted the lack of progress that's been made in respecting and protecting our vulnerable populations. We are committed to standing with and supporting all students and educators seeking to build an equitable and inclusive future for our world. And we are very grateful to all of our partners who participated in this panel discussion and all of you that stayed and participated in this conversation for helping us do that. So thank you very much.